Hello everyone, Cranny here. Today I'm going to be showing you all of my computers in order of when they were first released. So this is my Macintosh Plus. It's the oldest computer I own. It's an original beige 1 MB model from 1986. I've upgraded it to 4 MB of RAM because the original RAM that was in it was dead. I bought this thing with the extra floppy drive and an Image Writer 2 printer that I don't want to get out. All of them are in their original boxes. Next here we have the Macintosh 2. This one is from mid-1987, I believe. It has 8 MB of RAM, 512 kilobytes of VRAM, and 2 floppy drives. Sadly, only one of them works. It has the Apple Color high-resolution RGB monitor. Interestingly, it's a later revision one, meaning it's not actually the original monitor, but it was the monitor that they would have come with. This is my Macintosh LC2. It has 8 MB of RAM. It actually has the original drive, interestingly enough. I want to say it's a 40 meg 3600 RPM drive. And it actually works and has data on it. This thing sort of got damaged in shipping, but it's not in terrible condition at least. The main reason I bought it was also because it has an Ethernet card. This is my Power Macintosh 8100 80AV. It's got 48 megs of RAM. This is one of my favorite Macs, but sadly it doesn't work, at least not consistently. It will boot, but runs into errors quite often, either when booting or when in the OS. At some point I'll try to repair it to a fully working state because it's quite a cool computer. I at least got it for free. This is my Power Macintosh 7500 100. It's the most poorly built computer I have. There are many pieces of plastic broken off of it. I don't really care much for it, but it at least has 128 megabytes of RAM and a 400 MHz G3 upgrade card in it, which is pretty cool. Sadly, this doesn't work either like the 8100, but like the 8100, I got it for free, from the same guy actually. These are my ThinkPad 770Zs. One of them I got just a few years ago, and after a few months it stopped working. The other one I just got a few months ago. I combined the parts from each to make the best possible machine. The fully working one has the max supported 320 megabytes of RAM, though from what I know you can actually do tricks to get up to 512 megabytes. The other machine is pretty much a shit box. I triple boot Windows 98, 2000, and XP all from the same drive, with the install of Windows 98 being a factory one made with a restore disk. I actually got both of these for free. My original one was a gift from a teacher, and the newer one was a gift from a friend. This is my Power Macintosh G4 450 AGP. This is actually an original model from the first 2 months of production, so it has the Rage 128, not the Rage 128 Pro like the later models. This one has 128 megabytes of RAM and has the SCSI card option. This is my iMac G3 DVSE Summer 2000. It's in graphite, which is my favorite color used on the iMacs, and it matches the Power Mac G4. It has 128 megabytes of RAM at the moment. This was actually my first PowerPC Mac. This is my iBook G3 dual USB. I mostly don't use this thing. It was more of a parts machine for the next machine. My iBook G3 late 2001 600 megahertz. This thing has 320 megabytes of RAM, which I stole from the dual USB. I also took the better conditioned keyboard and the airport card from the dual USB and put it in this thing. The hard drives in these are pretty slow, especially in the dual USB. I have a feeling that because of the alliance Apple had with IBM at the time, they were travel stars. My friend's PowerBook G4 Titanium apparently had a travel star, so that's more of a reason to suspect these use them as well. This is my Latitude D610. This thing isn't a super well-built machine, but it is considerably better than its competitor, the ThinkPad T43, which I also used to own. I have it dual booting Windows 2000 and XP right now, and I have 1 gigabyte of RAM in it. The CPU is a 1.86 GHz Pentium M. This is my ThinkPad T60. This is a Core 2 Duo T7400, 4 gigabytes of RAM, the ATI X1400 graphics, and a 14-inch 1400 by 1050 display, meaning it's practically top spec. This thing is significantly better than the T43 it replaced. This is my Latitude D620. It's also a much better machine than the D610 it replaced, given the full magnesium body. Also, like the D610 with the T43, it's more well built than the T60. It's also interesting that the 14-inch T60 didn't offer widescreen, while the D620 was widescreen only. This one has a Core 2 Duo T78200, 2GB of RAM, the 1280x800 display, and chipset graphics. The dedicated graphics on these things like to die a lot. This is my Latitude D820. I mostly got this as a parts machine for my Precision M4300. It has 1GB of RAM, and I want to say a Core 2 Duo T5500 or something like that, but I'm not entirely sure. This is my polycarbonate MacBook. I don't even remember what year this is from or any of the specs of it, so I'm just throwing it in here. I have maybe used it for 15 or 20 minutes total. This is my Precision M4300. This thing has 3GB of RAM, an 800p display. The lid was swapped from the D820, as I'm not a big fan of the lids that the Precisions had, and prefer the Latitude ones. They are fully compatible, so it's just as easy as taking one out and putting another one in. I like this machine quite a bit because it was the best of the 2006 and 2007 Dell laptops which used this design. The 17-inch ones are probably faster, but they also are uglier in my opinion and use a different design from the smaller ones. This is my ThinkPad X61. It has 4GB of RAM and a 60GB SSD, both added by the original owner. Sadly no battery, and I have yet to order one. These are a pretty neat small laptop, and a 12-inch display isn't too bad when it's 4x3. Still being stuck at 1024x768 is a bit painful, and the performance isn't great at the moment because it throttles without a battery. This is my Latitude D430. It was actually the competitor to the X61S, so it's in a pretty similar class to my X61. It uses ultra-low voltage processors, with the top spec U7600, which mine has, only being an 11-watt TDP processor. This one has an 80GB drive and 2GB of RAM, which was the max, by the way. The 1280x800 display is a breath of fresh air coming from the X61. The performance isn't great, but it's actually no worse than the X61 is at the moment because of the throttling. Next, here's my ThinkPad W510. This is one of my favorite laptops from a design perspective. The 15-inch CS09 ThinkPads are the best built ThinkPads of all time. This one has 8GB of RAM and a 320GB drive, an i7 720QM, as well as the 900p display. It's not nearly as good as the 1080p display, which is the B156 HWON V.4, but it's not a bad display and still significantly better than anything that would have come in the 14-inch or 12-inch ThinkPads at the time. Speaking of bad displays, this is my T420. This one is the high-end 900p display even. It's got 10GB of RAM in it at the moment and an i5 2520M. It's an alright laptop, but these things were always worse than the 15-inch models. The T420 in particular is just weird looking, especially with the massive bottom bezel, which was at least toned down with the T430. This is my ThinkPad P52. It has an i7 8850H, Quadro P2000, the 4K touch display, 32GB of RAM, and a 1TB SSD. This is my daily driver laptop, and it's quite good, in some ways better than my desktop even. I got this thing about 3 months ago, and it's been great. However, the old keyboard had a few keycaps come off because the plastic was so thin on the chickeny backlit keyboard I had. I replaced it with a chickeny non-backlit for about $15. These P5X ThinkPads are basically my favorite modern ThinkPad design. Finally, here is my ThinkPad A45. This thing is basically a gimped version of the T480, and at some point I hope to do a comparison video between them. Still, it's a decent laptop. There's just no practical reason to get one over a T480. It has 16GB of RAM, a 256GB SSD, and the Ryzen 7 Pro 2700U. In theory, these things could actually be faster than T480s, but because Lenovo was incredibly stupid, they actually power throttled the CPU so it would have about 75% of the theoretical performance. There's definitely some way to get around this, and if you did, it would make the A45 a better machine, but I don't know how you do it, and you most likely would have to flash the BIOS. Anyway, I'm Cranny, and thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.